In this video, I'd like to talk about the key elements of the people of God. So after reading a portion of Loafing's book, maybe we can put together some of the important things about what he is talking about when he's talking about the people of God. Now, he's basing this so far off the story of the Israelites in the Old Testament. The revelation that God made to the Israelites through a special covenant relationship he had with them. And one of the most important things I think Loafing is talking about here is that the people of God either escape or abandon religiosity, right? I would call religiosity bad religion. It's when we take our self-centered desires or the desires of the state, right? Or the desires of the tribe, any group I'm putting myself in. If I take those people's desires and I put them ahead of the desire of the transcendent God who loves and cares for all, well, now I'm involved in religiosity, right? And it's present when any religion or cultural tradition promotes a system or practice in which some people are treated as less human than others, right? So popular forms we see in the world today, nationalism, right? My country, right or wrong. I've seen little signs that say that around my neighborhood. I don't agree with that. I think that's a bad way to view the world, right? Viewing other nations as a threatening competition, that's troublesome. Only caring about your own friends and family. We'll see in the case of the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. The meaning that Loafing took out of that was that you can't worship your family. You can't worship your children, right? You can't put your family needs ahead of everything else. If we're going to live as the people of God, which is the good life for the human beings, we have to look beyond our family's interest or just what our friends need, right? We can't just say, I'm going to take care of my family and try to eliminate or harm anyone else who might get in their way, right? We have to see all people, right, as the people of God, if we're going to escape or abandon religiosity. Racism is another obvious one, right? So you see people of other races as threatening competition. Xenophobia, another big issue coming to the forefront in the United States today, right? Why are some of us treating foreigners as threatening competition, right? Especially when most of us came from another country, right? Or most of us, our recent ancestors came from another country. It seems kind of strange, doesn't it? But these are the types of things that religiosity will get people to think are acceptable or even good, right? So any participation in a system in which some people accumulate wealth and power and no one else or very few other people are able to own anything, right? One person owns or a few people own everyone and everything else, right? That would be religiosity if somehow your religion would say that was good, right? And you see that in cults of state, like Nazi Germany, right? You saw that in Egypt in the Old Testament example. Endorsement and participation in a system which impress our slave people. Some people are starting to talk about the U.S. prison system and question it this way, right? Is this a system in which is actually enslaving people? You know, it is legal to enslave prisoners in the United States. Does that have anything to do with the rising prison populations we're seeing today? It's a good question. And finally, endorsement or participation in systems that don't provide equal rights or access to property or wealth to all. You see, it was an important part for the prophets in the Old Testament to tell the kings they're not allowed to take the land of the small farmers. Their job as king is to make sure that small farmer gets a chance to own and produce in his own land, right? Everybody gets a chance, an opportunity to take care of themselves and the people around them, right? The people who can't do that's another story. Then we take care of those people. But people who are able, The idea is that you give them a chance, you give them access to those equal rights, right? If you don't, if you're saying, oh, no, no, I should own everything, everyone else should be poor, and somehow enslaved or indebted to me, guess what you're doing? Religiosity, right? So we see lots of systems that do that. Some people will question, we see from unbridled capitalism. Some people is often used that way, just as much as communism is often used that way, right? You'll see Lofink's answer is not to adapt the system, but really to do something different, right? To abandon or escape these, and before moving on to uh, revelation, right? Before actually embracing revelation, right? So, as the people of God escape religiosity or bad religion, they they do it to form a society or form a people who follows actual revelation. A people who does the actual will of God. So you might call this good religion, when people are actually following the will of the transcendent God. And what is the will of the transcendent God? He wants us to be a community of loving persons. When we look at the Old Testament, we see the Torah, we see the prescriptions that God laid out. We can see the community of loving persons that existed in the Garden of Eden before the fall. And then we see God giving advice, helping and aiding the Israelites to try to create that society. And when they listen to him, it works better. And when they don't listen to him, things go very bad for them, right? So we see that in the Old Testament, the story of the covenant relationship with the Israelites. We see it with Jesus and the church. We see Jesus and the disciples, particularly the apostles, as the sign of the new Israel, being a community of loving persons where they are abandoning their old ways of life and coming and living in a new way, in which each person is recognized as a dignified child of God, right? In the New Testament, it's also revealed to us that God himself is a Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So that's pretty interesting. Now we're saying the transcendent reality, the source of everything, is a community of loving persons. So that's what the revelation is. And to be fair, like in this first part of Lofink's book, that's not always so clear. He talks about following God's will. What is it though? Well, he gives you little pieces as we go along. But if we look at it as a whole, it's being part of a community of loving persons. What does that mean? Well, again, it's kind of in a lot of ways juxtaposed to what we talked about with religiosity. Instead of having some kind of group that worships its own desires and excludes anyone who could get in the way of them, right? We see other people as family, friends, teammates, right? They're not threatening competitors anymore. People from other countries become our brothers and sisters, right? We're here to help them, just as when we came from other countries, appreciated the help of others, right? It involves being inclusive and open to all. That's probably the big distinction that we can see, right? That the will of the transcendent God is not concerned with just one group of people, the way that we often are, and where we see other people, other countries, other kinds of people as a threat. No, the transcendent God is the source and lover of all people. And so being the people of God means that we're inclusive, we're open to everyone. Everyone is welcome to come and be a part of the people of God. Now, if you don't want to do it, well then you're parallel to the man in one of Jesus' parables who goes to the wedding but doesn't wear the wedding garment, right? If you don't want to be part of it, well, those people usually leave on their own. But this is what it means to be the people of God. It's not just taking care of me and my people. It's not just my country. It's not just my family. It's not just my friends. It's not just my race. It's not just my whatever. But it's recognizing all, open to bringing all people into the community of loving persons. And so, what does that have to do within the community? It's trying to defend the rights and dignity of all people. We saw in the Torah where even the failed farmer, and maybe that farmer failed for his own fault, but he was given a chance, right? They were given a chance in the Jubilee year. Oh, here's your land back. Okay, try again, right? That way, It wasn't a situation in which one person owned all the land and everyone else worked it for them as their servants or slaves, right? So that has to do with assuring the freedom of all people. Everyone should have this access to property and wealth, right? We have to take care of everyone as if they're our teammate, our brother, our sister, right? And that doesn't mean, as Lofing points out, giving them handouts and paying money for someone else to take care of them and just ignoring them and let them then do whatever they want. No, that means actually helping them. So we actually try to help people um, learn. We help people learn and have the means to take care of themselves and the people around them. Right? Access to property and wealth for all people. Very different from a situation in which people will just pay money for someone else to take care of people who they don't want to deal with. So, in short, the will of God is that we become like God, a community of loving persons, right? An open and free community of loving persons. And finally, the third main aspect that stuck out for me with Lofink was trust in the goodness of God. And this gets into our whole why God chose evolution theme that Lofink lays out in the book. You know, why this slow and arduous process with so many dead ends and so many places where things can and have gone wrong, so to speak. Why so much possibility for violence and evil in this process? Well, the people of God trust that some good is at work in everything that God lets happen, right? So the people of God trust God's methods even when they're very, very slow. You saw Abraham trusting God, trusting him that he would give him a son, trusting him even that he would keep his covenant when he seemed about to be taking that son away from him, right? You saw Joshua and Caleb trusting God when God said it was time to go into the land, even though the people there, were very tall and tough. Um, so again and again, we see this trust, and even when you can't see exactly how things are going to go about, there's that trust. Now, again, we're not getting to blind faith here. Lofing makes a good point. It says the reason that the Israelites were able to trust God throughout their history is because they looked back and they could see there was tough times before, and God helped them through them. Right? So we're never asking you to trust blindly, right? But we're asking you to have an open mind, right? If you want to understand, if you want to live this good life, right? Life as the people of God, it does take trust. Trust in God, that God is at work, even when times seem tough, even when things seem to be taking a long time, but also trust in neighbor, right? To treat them as a loved one instead of a competitor. Okay, I hope this is going to basically wrap up what I'm looking at from Lofink's work. Is going to help you do well in the final. Please take advantage of the final review videos that I'm putting out and prepare well for the final.